Okay, so we're moving right along. We have learned about the marquee tool and we've made a selection of Mars. I'm going to hide Mars right now, turn the eyeball off or the invisibility for the Mars layer so we don't see it. And what I'm going to want to do is I want to get rid of this sky. We're going to replace it, put our own cool stuff back there. So I want to make sure I have mountains layer selected. This is really important in Photoshop. You want to make sure the layer you're working on is active or selected. And I'm going to come over here to my toolbar, and there's something called the Quick Selection tool. There is also a Magic Wand tool underneath. We'll talk about that later. But I'm going to begin with the Quick Selection tool. Yours may or may not be this size. If you do the right bracket key on the keyboard, it gets bigger. Left bracket key, it's smaller. And what I'm going to do is I want to make a selection of the mountains. All right, so I'm going over and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hit Command 0 to kind of zoom in like that. And I want to come over and I'm clicking and dragging to make a selection. All right, and you can see the marching ants going on the outside of my mountains. I'm going to purposefully click up here just to show you if you click wrong. All right, and you can see my marching ants now are selecting part of that sky. What I can do is I can hold the Option key and I can option drag and take away a bad or missed kind of selection. Okay, so Option does the opposite. Just clicking and dragging with this, you can see it active up here, adds to the selection. If I hold Option or if I click up here, it subtracts from the selection. I'm going to zoom in with the zoom tool. I can see an error right here. So I'm going to click and drag and zoom in. Gets pixelated as I zoom in, which is fine. I'm going to go back to my Quick Selection tool. It's way too big, so left bracket key to make it smaller. And I want to add that bit in. If it goes outside a little bit, that's fine. Command 0 to zoom back out. Now what we want to do is select the opposite. So we highlighted the mountains to select the mountains. We want to select the opposite. The fancy term for that in Photoshop is inverse. And again, we can do that up in the select menu because we're dealing with selections. And we can do inverse, which is also Shift Command I. And when I do that, the marching ants move up here to the top. And now the sky is selected. And we're going to make a layer mask out of this. Because again, we are thinking smart as designers. We don't want to delete this. I can simply hit delete. Oh, actually, I can't hit delete because I made a smart object, which is good because I don't want to delete pixels. But if that was not a smart object, if I hit delete, it would delete it. That's what dummies do. That's what people that don't understand Photoshop do. We have the ability to do non-destructive editing. So instead of delete, there's a tool called Layer Mask. Down at the bottom of our layers, there's a square with a circle in it. I'm going to click on that. And what you can see is since I did the inverse of the selection, I had the sky selected, it got rid of my mountains, which I don't want. So I'm going to Command Z. The reason why I did that is I wanted to show you inverse. Because sometimes it's easier to select like the sky and inverse to the mountains or vice versa. And if you do the Adobe certification, you do need to know inverse. So I'm going to inverse it back so that my marching ants are along the bottom border and along my mountains. And I'm going to come up here and click on that for a layer mask. I don't want this background layer because it's just going to throw us off. So I'm going to trash that with the trash can. Click yes. And you can see now there should be a checkered background on your canvas. That checkered background means transparent. Really key concept to understand in Photoshop. Checkered means transparent, invisible, nothing there, which is really important. Another tip, by clicking on that layer mask button, it added this little thumbnail. That is our mask, okay? And when I roll over, it says layer mask thumbnail. This is really important. I can get rid of this thumbnail at any time. I can also shift click on it to temporarily turn it off, and we can see the sky still there. I haven't deleted it. I'm going to shift click again to make it active. What this does is white reveals what's on the layer and black conceals. White reveals, black conceals. So black conceals the sky, white reveals the mountains. That way, if I were to turn my moon on, or Mars on, sorry, and I no longer need this selection, you see these marching ants along Mars, I'm going to Command D to deselect, Command D for deselect. I'm going to take Mars, I'm going to drag the Mars layer below the mountains, and since it's transparent, it goes below the mountains. And now we've created a cool layer mask. We've already made a selection of Mars. Mars looks like it's rising up behind the mountains, which is pretty cool. While we're here, we're going to use the marquee tool again. And we're going to put it also behind the mountains on a new layer. So I'm going to come down here right next to the trash can, create a new layer. It looks like a folded piece of paper. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to take my marquee, regular rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to Command minus just so I can have some scratch board out here. And I'm going to click and drag way out here to the left outside of the board. And I'm going to draw a rectangle just inside the lowest part of the mountain range. And I want to fill this selection in. I want to fill these marching ants in. That's why I have this new layer. And actually, you know what? I don't even need that new layer because we're going to do a special layer. So let me delete that now that I'm thinking about it. I'm going to delete that. And with my marquee selection tool still active, marching ant still active, I'm going to come down, and right next to the layer mask tool, we see a half circle. It says create new fill or adjustment layer. I'm going to click on that. Create new fill or adjustment layer, and I want to create a gradient fill layer. Gradient fill layer. So I'm clicking on that. My gradient fill pops up. By default, it's probably black to transparent, which I don't want. So I'm going to click the down arrow, and I don't want any of these colors. These are built-in gradients. Again, if we come under this cog right here, there are other gradients that you can open, right? We're not going to use any of these, but I just wanted to show you that they are there. I'm going to click this black and gray and click out, but I want to change the color. So I did down arrow to select it. Now I'm going to click inside of the colors, and it's black and white, but I have black and I have white. These are two stops along my gradient bar, and I could change the color of either one. The top is the opacity stop. Right now they're 100% each. Means 100% of the color. I could click on this one, for example, and bring the opacity down to 0. Okay, and now it's black to white, but the white's 0% opacity in it. You can see here it slowly fades. I don't want that. I want it at 100, but I just wanted to show you how that works. I'm going to double click on the black. And over here, I'm going to pick kind of a light blue, something in that range. Doesn't have to be exact. Something along those lines. Maybe we'll do, let's see, 240, 40, and 100. Kind of got a little purplish hue to it. Click OK. I'm going to double click on the white. Come over to blue. I'm going to get something really dark down here. So let's say 240, 100, and 50. All right, 240, 150. I'm going to click OK. From here, we can adjust it, right? We can add extra stops, do stuff like that. I like how it looks like that, so I'm going to click OK. We can adjust the angle. We can scale it. You can reverse it, right? So much you can do there. I'm going to leave it just like that, and I'm going to click OK. Now I want to call this, we can leave it gradient fill. which is fine. We've got Mars, gradient fill, and our mountains for now.